He's a monster. Go right up to him, mate. Look at the size of the head on him too. Hey, big boy. Wow.
It's Friday afternoon and I have just finished my first week back at school. I am feeling kind of conflicted. It was wonderful to be in the classroom and wonderful to see students again, to see them face to face. But I'm worried. I'm worried for them. I'm worried for my personal children. I'm worried for my students. We've been in 5 days and we have 10 confirmed staff members, 7 confirmed students with COVID, 100 and something people in quarantine because of this virus. I would love more than anything for this virus to be a joke and for it not to be real and for no one to get hurt. But I'm worried. Got a text today from one of my friends that said, I don't know how we're going to survive this experiment. It takes me a minute in the afternoons to sort of focus and feel like I'm ready to go home and see my family and do the next part of my day. So today I'm sitting here thinking, deciding. I made the decision to go back because I love teaching. I just worry because the numbers aren't looking good and it doesn't look like we can keep everyone safe under these circumstances. And I don't want to lose a student. So it's Monday morning and I'm getting ready to start my second week of school with student. Over the weekend, we had 3 high schools, 2 elementary schools, confirmed cases of COVID. I'm really excited to be teaching and to be in the classroom, but I'm also worried that every moment I spend in that classroom, I'm risking my health, my life, and the health and lives of my family. But what we really need are subs. Friday we were down a sub and I got extra kids in my class because of it. Today, if there are no subs, those kids are going to be spread out again. I need the janitors to be sanitizing the desks in the afternoon. I need my desks to be clean. I need substitute teachers. I need plastic barriers in my classroom. I need social distancing. Those are the only things that are going to keep me safe. And without them, this is a risk, what I do every day. It's not the risk I signed up for. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse. I didn't sign up to fight a virus in a classroom. I signed up to teach English, signed up to teach literature, grammar. And then I did my best to take care of the kids and make sure their social and emotional needs were met, that they weren't physically being abused, that they had food. There are a lot of things that I need to be safe, and this is not working.
In times like these, the news-making events happen here. ABC News.
President Trump meeting face-to-face with one of the world's most brutal dictators, Kim Jong-un.
The president.
You trust him?
I do trust him, yeah. I think he trusts me, and I trust him.
Ivanka Trump.
I have to ask you about your emails. Your father had taken Hillary Clinton to task for this.
There just is no equivalency.
So the idea of lock her up doesn't apply to you?
No.
Comey.
How strange is it for you to sit here and compare the president to a mob boss?
Very strange.
Michelle Obama.
What do you wish you could tell your pre-White House self?
Melania Trump.
Do you think there's still people there that he can't trust?
Yes.
Still working now?
Yes.
Michael Cohen.
So he's still lying.
Yes.
It's a big statement.
And now, in a year with so much on the line, we're right there.
Good evening tonight from Washington, a very busy news night.
America's #1 news source, ABC News, straightforward.
We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. No bull, no spin. Now imagine getting your news like that. Just give it to me straight. ABC News, straightforward.
Another week in America, a country facing a new test now.
The Wuhan airport, almost no one here.
The last flight out of Rome.
This is the nursing home just outside Seattle. Dozens of people were just rushed off this cruise ship.
This is ground zero.
It is shut down.
Another ambulance just pulled out.
Now they're headed to the hospital.
Time is of the essence.
You can see the ship behind me.
This is the first time tests have been done here.
Morning, afternoon, evening, late night, 24/7. ABC News, there for you.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. Start Here, free on Apple Podcasts.
When you're outside and not have the capability of maintaining distance, you should wear a mask at all times.
Just wear the darn mask. There's not a lot of tools left in the kit for us.
I don't think we should be required to wear one because, it's a free country.
COVID has fundamentally changed a lot of things about how we live. At the beginning, I think there was a lot of confusion. Nobody had ever really tested masks in a pandemic setting. But now that we're in this real world experiment, there's a much stronger evidence that's come out in real time and in real life.
There was little to no social distancing at his back-to-back celebrations this weekend.
I am not even one iota concerned about getting the coronavirus.
This is something that everybody should take serious. It's everybody's right to be safe.
If I can convince one person to wear a mask and not spread it to somebody else, it will cause someone else to lose their dad.
It's nothing about identifying as Democrat or Republican. Virus doesn't care. I think it's empowered people who react very strongly against being told what to do, even if it's in their best interests. And that's something that's pretty unique, I think, to the American society. It does not work well in a pandemic when everybody needs to work together in the same direction.
President Trump wearing a mask in public for the first time at Walter Reed Medical Center, visiting COVID first responders and wounded soldiers.
The government is there to protect our rights. They're not there to tell us how to live our life and how to be healthy, basically.
If we could get everybody to wear a mask right now, I really do think over the next 4, 6, 8 weeks, we could bring this epidemic under control.
We have all the tools. We're just too busy fighting each other. That's when COVID's just sweeping on by.
Utah protesters battling over masks.
I think it's totally wrong. I think it's a political hoax.
And while we all agree that wearing a mask is effective, I'm confident that Georgians don't need a mandate to do the right thing.
You can't trust people to do the right thing all the time. That's why I don't think you can trust people to wear seatbelts. There's fines and penalties for not taking basic responsibility. Masks are integral to protecting other people. I think it's even more important to mandate those things.
And now major retailers like Target, CVS, and Walgreens are joining Walmart, Kroger's, and Kohl's in requiring customers to wear face masks in all their stores.
It will probably, unfortunately, get worse before it gets better. Whether you like the mask or not, they have an impact.
This is the way. The
cheapest, the most effective way for us to open up our businesses.
I think corporate America has woken up and recognized that this is a huge threat to their livelihoods. It's not a choice between reopening or controlling the epidemic. These are the same things.
Despite the surge in cases, the CDC laying out its new guidelines for schools nationwide, recommending schools keep kids in pods, use social distancing, and recommends students and staff wear face coverings.
More than 4.2 million Americans have tested positive.
And we begin tonight with that grim new milestone, the death toll in this country now topping 150,000 from the coronavirus.
Masks are probably the single most important non-pharmaceutical intervention that we have as societies reopen.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
Neighborhoods are underwater.
24/7 streaming news source from ABC News.
There goes.
Imagine breaking news, live events as they happen, streaming live, non-stop, straight to you. Imagine instant, incredible access to the most compelling live video.
That's a grenade.
Original, on the edge, breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, all the most innovative storytellers, all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want, free. And imagine the most celebrated, epic live events and moments, all playing out right before your eyes.
See those flames behind me?
Go
We're
there
trying
now.
to put this fire out right
with
now.
ABC News Live. Think of it as your live streaming adrenaline rush.
Just look at all of the smoke here.
Real, raw,
Welcome
live.
to the Columbus Zoo.
No matter where the next step takes us, we're taking it.
It's frightening.
And go deeper inside the groundbreaking exclusives from the campaign trail only ABC News gets. Behind the scenes, exclusive access.
Take you inside for an extraordinary tour here at ABC News Live. This is it.
It's time to go there, be there, experience it, live on the scene. Maybe that's why, in just 1 year, ABC News Live is already America's #1 live streaming news. And imagine this, it's free. Watch ABC News Live right now and anytime, streaming on Roku, Hulu, Facebook, and abcnews.com.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you.
In Florida, officials Tuesday reporting the deadliest day yet, with at least 277 virus-related fatalities. Neighboring Georgia also hitting a record. But nationwide, some encouraging news. New COVID infections and deaths are down week over week. And Monday marked the first day since June with no record set. But scenes like this prompting concerns about people letting their guard down. A so-called pop-up party in New York City. People taking over a city bus, dancing and smoking. No one wearing a mask. And this video showing 1,500 people partying at a rave in Brooklyn. No social distancing in sight.
83 days out from Election Day, and today Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will make their first appearance in Wilmington, Delaware as running mates.
Harris, the first Black and Asian American woman on a major party's ticket. Biden previously saying trust would be a major factor in his decision.
One of the things I learned is that no president in the 21st century can handle the job all by themselves.
President Trump Tuesday attacking Harris within minutes of the announcement.
The most horrible, most disrespectful of anybody in the U.S. Senate.
Claiming she's the most liberal senator.
Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, one of the Democratic progressive women known as the Squad, has won her primary in Minneapolis.
It feels good. It feels good. I don't think we would have had this much challenge if we were not being completely effective if we were not changing the conversation, if we didn't start new narratives about who belongs in seats of power.
In 2018, Somali-born Omar was one of 2 Muslim women first elected to the U.S. Congress. President Trump has called her an America-hating socialist.
A Republican candidate for Congress in Georgia getting a big thumbs up from the president today, despite being condemned by several members of the GOP.
Despite embracing a French conspiracy theory and facing backlash for espousing racist, anti-Semitic, and Islamophobic views in recent videos, President Trump congratulated businesswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene on winning the Republican runoff for Georgia's 14th congressional district. Greene has also embraced the QAnon conspiracy theory.
Quarantine numbers in one Georgia school district on the rise. More than 1,000 students now forced to stay home after dozens tested positive during the first few days of class. Recent photos show students sitting and walking closely together, even taking part in a fire drill with no social distancing. The decision to reopen classrooms igniting debate across the country. One school district in New Jersey going all remote due to a lack of teachers. 375 teachers now saying they won't return because of COVID fears. The same anxiety felt in Texas.
Please go by science.
Middle school teacher Rebecca Asher quitting at a school board meeting.
I just didn't feel the district had adequate plans to keep both students and teachers safe.
But in this Detroit suburb, where the school district is leaning toward virtual learning, parents are demanding in-person classes.
It's just too hard. It's too hard for adults that understand it and do it daily.
A similar scene in Phoenix, Arizona.
Nobody wants to put anybody at risk here, but we also have to think about the whole health of the child.
Another day of mourning in Beirut after the explosion that ripped apart the port last week.
Holding pictures of the dead, residents held a solemn vigil for the victims, marching through damaged neighborhoods to the Beirut port. The lives of more than 170 honored with a moment of silence at exactly 6:08 local time when the explosion wreaked havoc not just on the capital but the nation. The trauma so deep, the vigil appeared to be not just for the dead but also for the grieving families, the injured, the homeless, the bankrupt, and the abandoned, those citizens who say their government failed to protect them.
Chief Meteorologist Ginger Z, I want to bring you through the forecast, which includes flash flooding. Already have seen it this morning just west of Washington, D.C., but from Franklin and Fredericksburg, Virginia, Charlottesville, up through Maryland and Delaware, even into New York, White Plains, New York, included in the flash flood watch. These are the pictures from Manassas Park. This is west of Washington, D.C. A couple of inches falls very quickly, and you get a flash flood warning. If you see a flash flood warning today, a warning means don't go out. As long as you don't get in your car, you don't get hurt by flash flooding. That was something wasn't learning there in Arkansas as cars were trying to plow through their flash flooding from the same system that was moving through. Also had some damaging winds with it when it was making its way through Arkansas. And you got to remember too, it's been more than a week since Isaias, and there's still more than 25,000 customers in New York without power. So when you get a flash flood threat, thunderstorms, that's problematic. And of course the heat advisories that are still around. Look at that target, 3 to 4 inches in southern Maryland. So we're keeping an eye on that. And also in the Midwest, remember, you've got more than 600,000 customers without power after the derecho. Now, the heat, though, is really centered on Connecticut, parts of Massachusetts today. But watch what happens. That cold front that is producing these storms eventually moves through. It's slow to go, and that's why you've got a couple of bubbles of thunderstorms the next day or two. But New York City will stop in the mid-80s by the weekend. Philadelphia gets down into the low 80s by Saturday. Boston, that's a 72 on the map. I wouldn't want to say fall, but it would feel like it.
With America in the midst of this so-called racial reckoning, untold stories are coming to light. And tonight, a look at a woman born into slavery who would go on to create a delicious recipe many Americans have likely enjoyed. Her descendants hope in our country's push to right past wrongs that there's not an overcorrection and that her legacy can live on. Our Deborah Roberts reports.
Under the grass, it's barely noticeable, an unmarked grave covering what for nearly a century was an untold story of one of America's hidden figures.
I mean, who else has experienced slavery and then
walk through all of the experiences of America. I mean, Jim Crow, segregation, lynchings.
You've probably never heard her name, but Nancy Green has likely been in your kitchen.
When my mom would prepare pancakes, that was just part of the whole experience of being in the household, is that you sat there and waited for the pancakes to be prepared so that you could get them, hot off the griddle.
Right there on your pancake box.
As a kid, my mother always made those.
Everybody ate those pancakes.
Aunt Jemima pancakes without
her face on the box was probably the one way that households were integrated.
Add some butter and syrup. You'll like them. Aunt Jemima. Perfect pancakes in 10 shakes.
The Aunt Jemima recipe, created by Nancy Green, and with it, the birth of the American pancake. Long before she pioneered that famous mix, Nancy Green was born into slavery in Montgomery County, Kentucky.
She was taken away from, she's not with her family, but she is learning to survive and use her God-given talent to still push forward and move forward, which is the story of most African-American people in the United States, that they used what they had to become what they were.
After the Civil War, Green moved to a divided Chicago, becoming a strong voice at Olivet Baptist Church, the oldest black congregation.
This church was noted for its work to shield those who had escaped slavery, who arrived here in Chicago, because there were many slave catchers in Chicago still pursuing people who were of African descent.
Sherry Williams lives in Chicago's Bronzeville neighborhood and has been shining a light on Nancy Green's story for more than a decade.
Most people have no idea who Nancy Green was. Why is that, do you think?
I believe because she is looked upon as a character, as opposed to a living, breathing individual.
Even connecting the dots for one of her descendants.
She actually opened up a box that we couldn't open.
Literally opened a box.
Marcus Hayes only recently learned about his family's past.
When I found out about it, to be honest, I was shocked and excited at the same time. Living in the United States, some African Americans, as you may know, it is hard for them to go that far back to get who they're connected to.
A history forged through a recipe Nancy Green first whipped up for the family she cooked and cared for.
It was so good that the boys would now tell everyone, hey, I have a caretaker who cooks for us, and she makes this amazing recipe, and she calls them flapjacks. And the milling company heard about it and knew that she was using their meal. They came and sought her out.
Just like that, Aunt Jemima was born. The big debut, the World's Fair at Chicago's Jackson Park back in 1893. Green selling 50,000 boxes of the now famous pancake mix.
She was the trusted face back then. You know, anybody who would look at an African-American woman cooking, they knew that they can trust her cooking.
And over all those years, ads for Aunt Jemima never mentioning Nancy Green.
She was a businesswoman. She created her own agency through what she did well as a storyteller, as a cook, as a nurse.
After Green died in 1923, other women became the living Aunt Jemima symbols, ambassadors hired by Quaker Oats to continue the legacy.
My great aunt, Lillian, she went to Dallas, Texas. She was discovered by Quaker Oats to be their spokesperson.
Vera Harris always heard the stories about Aunt Lillian and how she helped portray Aunt Jemima for decades.
When Quaker Oats would bring her back to Hawkins, Texas, that everybody would be real excited.
Aunt Lillian putting her small Texas community on the map.
Hawkins is the pancake capital of Texas, is that right?
Yes, it was declared the pancake capital of Texas because of my Aunt Lillian.
And unlike Nancy Green, Lillian Richard with her own headstone and a plaque in Hawkins. A pancake breakfast every year, too. Educating others about the faces and names behind the Aunt Jemima brand and image.
I believe that some people may have thought that those faces were not real.
Real faces, real stories. Vera Harris and Marcus Hayes say they're now in danger of being erased. In June, PepsiCo, Quaker Oats' parent company, announced the Aunt Jemima brand would be phased out by the end of September.
When you learned that the Aunt Jemima face on this box, on the syrup, is likely to be phased out, what was your reaction?
I was taken aback. I was really shocked because I knew people didn't realize that those were real people. And, to phase them out would kind of erase their history.
She's just not a character that I really want her legacy to be told, that this is a real person and this is her recipe. And she fed the world from her flapjacks.
There are people who are concerned right now about images, antiquated images, these minstrel images, which is why PepsiCo is thinking maybe it's time for that image to go. What's your feeling about that?
In no time ever have I heard anyone in my community say that this image was one that was derogatory. So I don't know where that sentiment is coming from.
In a statement to ABC News, Pepsi saying this is a sensitive matter that must be handled thoughtfully and with care. We respect the women who have contributed to our brand story and will approach our rebranding with their heritage in mind. The company committing $400 million to various causes to help with diversity, but so far, no direct contact with these two families.
Does PepsiCo owe anything to the descendants of these women?
I really think they do.
Pepsi not yet announcing the future of the longtime brand.
For so long, it was called Aunt Jemima pancakes. What should it be called then? Aunt Green's pancakes?
You know what? We don't know what it could be called. Long as she is somewhere in the mix, call it Nancy Green. It's not about money. This is about the truth.
A truth and a story now being told no matter what happens with the brand.
Nancy, you're a storyteller, and now your story is being told again.
After a decade-long push, just this month, Sherry finally raised the money to give this trailblazer a proper headstone and marker she's long deserved. Headstone artist Mark Hunt not even aware of Nancy Green's past.
It's been an inspiration to me, and it's been an eye-opener for me. Yeah. Because a lot of people like myself didn't know what she did.
Carefully etching a face that will now be preserved for generations.
Oh my goodness. Oh my God. Oh my God. Phenomenal.
Sherry getting her first look at the headstone she's fought so hard for.
I love it. Look at the details.
After lying beneath this grass in anonymity for nearly a century, a moment of hope in the middle of America's racial reckoning.
I'm pretty sure she's smiling down because it's so many people like my Aunt Lillian and others that contributed to make this country great, and people just didn't know. But if you get that story out, it will encourage other young women, black and white, to go out and do some great things.
And a recognition of the difficult work that lies ahead.
Let's fight for what we know to be right. Let's fight for a change. It is motivation to keep pushing. Although we may not be facing the things that she faced, we still have our own oppressions, if you will, our own challenges. And I think for me, it gives me the courage, it gives me the motivation to push forward and make sure that you do something great in this world, that you leave a mark, that people know about you.
Deborah Roberts, ABC News.
What you're seeing right now, this is part of the eye wall.
This procession of migrants goes back 2 miles.
There is going to be catastrophic damage.
This fire has made a run. You can see those flames shooting up into the sky.
We are on the jam-packed red carpet.
To the right, guys.
So this is the 4th weekend of protest.
Watch ABC News on location for Facebook Watch.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. So if you like getting behind the biggest news stories of the day, inside all the details, the backstory, and what will happen next, then listen to Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. It's like no other news podcast out there. Even the critics agree. Listen free on Apple Podcasts.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Breaking news, live events, streaming nonstop. Original breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, and it's all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you.
ABC News Live. It's that easy to go there.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqis. 18,000 tons. Patatas. Ismail? David.
Over ground zero from Hurricane Michael.
You can see just home after home.
David, thanks to meet you.
This was your view.
My favorite view. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to the doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals,
and first responders.
Thank you to everyone keeping our supermarkets, pharmacies, gas stations running.
Thank you to all the essential workers for all that you do.
We thank you.
We thank you. We thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
For all you do.
And with every challenge, question, concern, we'll be here for you every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Because we will
get through this together.
Time for Wait, What?
Huh? What?
And we're starting with terror crocodiles.
Wait, what?
Yes, that's right. Apparently 75 million years ago, ginormous, gigantic, 33-foot-long crocodiles roamed the earth.
Say what?
Yep, that's according to a new study. They were called Deinosuchus, or terror crocodiles.
Yeah, they used to wait until dinosaurs were on the edge of the water trying to get something to drink, and then,
got them.
Yeah, they would snap.
That would be a great, I think we actually have seen this in a movie, some Jurassic Park film.
Lake Placid.
Oh, yes, that's right.
That's where the terror crocodile is, yeah.
They look cute, they look big. They found this, again, this was in a new study. Apparently they disappeared before the main mass extinction at the end of the age of dinosaurs. The reason unknown.
But it was in current day Florida.
Oh, okay.
Where they spotted these terror crocodiles who look like alligators, which I thought were the same thing, but guess not. All right, next on, wait, what? This story is sure to scratch your head. Take a look at this. Apparently, this man caught his wife cheating on none other than Google Earth. Now,
wait, what?
Yeah, if you're not familiar with Google Earth, you can look at real life
then you're not from planet
snapshots. Right. You can look at real life snapshots of streets, and they blur people's faces out to protect their privacy, but all that man needed to see was that black shirt, white cardigan, and he was like, that is my wife, and another man in her lap. He confronted her about it. It happened, I believe, in Lima, Peru. He confronted her about it, and she was like, it's true, I've been cheating.
Oh, so Google Maps, they blur the faces there, so, but still, he knew. And it wasn't enough to stop the woman's husband recognizing them. This is crazy. He confronted his wife over what he had seen, and she admitted the affair before the couple later divorced.
A cheater will always get caught.
And submitted into evidence, Google Maps.
Lord.
Hey, so we have talked a lot about these bears. Been roaming around, black bears. This one right here, so a black bear walked up to a picnic table, and then the people fed it. Wait, what?
Yeah.
That's right. Not only fed it, but just slathered on some peanut butter.
Made a whole peanut butter sandwich, y'all.
This is actually kind of serious
Park
right
Service
here.
tell you, do not feed the bears. Do not interact, because it can change in a split second.
Yeah, that's right. And talking about, juggling a lot of balls in the air. Look at this image right here.
Nice segue.
Wait, what? 5 balls in the air and swimming?
The backstroke.
Wait, what?
Now we are going to celebrate World Elephant Day. And the story of how an extraordinary group of women are going above and beyond to protect these majestic animals who are facing extinction in Africa. A new National Geographic documentary follows the fearless female rangers. Janae Norman has their inspiring story and joins us now. Good morning, Janae.
Robin, good morning. These incredible women are helping revolutionize the fight against poaching, saving elephants by getting the community to see the economic value and preserving the animals. But don't get it twisted. These women are trained like special forces and ready for battle if it comes to that.
I love my elephants like my children.
In Africa's Zimbabwe, elephants are headed toward extinction. Poachers are killing them for their ivory tusks. But an all-female unit called a Kashinga, started just 3 years ago with 16 recruits, is making all the difference.
Ladies, as we are coming here, everyone, we know we are coming here for training. And it's good to work together.
Of 500 recruits, only maybe 82 will have what it takes, like Senior Ranger Sergeant Petronella Shikumbura.
Some of them, they are going to finish. Some of them, they are going to surrender.
The women will confront dangerous armed poachers, but they're no strangers to hardship.
These ladies are like me. Their life is tough. It's very difficult to survive. They work hard to having food. They work hard to having even clothes to wear. I'm going to push you. I'm going to say yes. So you're going to push me back. Then you say no. Yes. No. I say yes. No. Can you approach the poacher? No. You must be aggressive and be confident. Say no. Do you want to know? Can you fight? How strong are you? Yes. I say yes.
8,000 elephants were killed in the 16 years before the Ashinga arrived.
And those women have been able to break open those syndicates and drive a downturn in elephant poaching across this entire landscape.
I'm so excited to tell them they are now accepted to be Akashinga Rangers. I vote to use my skills and training to protect these animals. You are now Akashinga.
And you can see Akashinga, the brave ones. Right now, it's streaming for free on akashinga.film and across all National Geographic platforms. And when you see this, you will see why they're being called unbreakable women and an unstoppable force. They are fierce, Robin.
Oh my goodness, Janae.
Yeah.
And it's just a reminder, the strength of women all around the world and what they are doing is just incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
The best way to describe my job as the coordinator of all things medical that happen behind the scenes. To pull this off and to have it be a success, we had to make sure that we were so completely thorough. What's the cleaning gonna look like? How often should we wipe down? What should we wipe down with? Should we be spraying down? What does the ventilation look like? How is the air circulating in the arena? How much time do we need in between games to wipe down the floors? Get the locker rooms turned over. Should the players shower at the arena? Should they not? What's the interaction with the media gonna look like? How close are the chairs gonna be? How many chairs are we gonna have? Who wears a mask? What type of mask? All of those things. And so there's so many details. This 100+ page health and safety protocol, so much went into it.
What motivated you to want to be a doctor?
I've always had an interest in the medical world. It started in Head Start. There's a picture of me holding up a sign of what I want to be when I grow up, and it was an EMT. In terms of the real inspiration, that came watching Dr. Ben Carson as the lead doctor separating the craniopagus twins joined at the head. Seeing someone who looked like me doing something like that was it. I want to be that guy. I want to be like him. I believe that my success necessitates that I reach back and pull more people along. The biggest benefit I think of this job and this role that I have is the opportunity to be present, be visible, but also to inspire up-and-coming physicians who are in emergency medicine, who are in sports medicine. And so for me, the legacy will be, how many more can I inspire? How many more Black doctors can I encourage?
What's the key to continued success? Got still like another 3 months to go, so do you celebrate now or do you not celebrate?
The first milestone was wheels down. We got 22 teams on the ground into the hotel. The next milestone for me was scrimmages. Courts active, lights are up, games are being transmitted. And then the milestone after that was the start of the season. Now it's real. We've had no staff members test positive. We've had no players test positive. And that's major. And so, can we celebrate? I think we can celebrate the fact that we've been successful up until this point, but I don't think that the final horn is sounded, and it's not until then that we can really celebrate. But how do we maintain the success? It's by being vigilant, making sure that we're doing the right thing.
In times like these, the news-making events happen here. ABC News.
President Trump meeting face-to-face with one of the world's most brutal dictators, Kim Jong-un.
The president.
You trust him? I do trust him, yeah. I think he trusts me, and I trust him.
Ivanka Trump.
I have to ask you about your emails. Your father had taken Hillary Clinton to task for this.
There just is no equivalency.
So the idea of lock her up doesn't apply to you?
No.
Comey.
How strange is it for you to sit here and compare the president to a mob boss?
Very strange.
Michelle Obama.
What do you wish you could tell your pre-White House self?
Melania Trump.
Do you think there's still people there that he can't trust?
Yes.
Still working now?
Yes.
Michael Cohen.
So he's still lying?
Yes.
It's a big statement.
And now, in a year with so much on the line, we're right there.
Good evening tonight from Washington, a very busy news night.
America's #1 news source, ABC News, straightforward.
We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. No bull, no spin. Now imagine getting your news like that. Just give it to me straight. ABC News, straightforward.
Another week in America, a country facing a new test now.
The Wuhan airport, almost no one here.
The last flight out of Rome.
This is the nursing home just outside Seattle.
Dozens of people were just rushed off this cruise ship.
This is ground zero.
It is shut down.
Another ambulance just pulled out.
Now they're headed to the hospital.
Time is of the essence.
You can see the ship behind me.
This is the first time tests have been done here.
Morning, afternoon, evening, late night, 24/7. ABC News, there for you.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. Start Here, free on Apple Podcasts.
This is a case about a love triangle that turned deadly.
The football hero, his wife, and the other woman. 2020, Friday at 9, 8 Central on ABC.
What you need to know right now. Our back-to-school spotlight all this week. How the pandemic is reshaping the annual tradition. The first woman of color on a major political ticket, Kamala Harris. DNC Chair Tom Perez joins us on Joe Biden's historic Veep choice. Coronavirus still slamming Texas. The governor says cases and hospitalizations have to come down before widespread restrictions are relaxed. The mayor of Laredo here on the frontline fight. We'll meet the school bus driver headed back to school himself. Making your digital identity shine. Expert technology tips for students and the rest of us. Plus, picture this, the photographer documenting Latinx life in the age of Corona. And the NBA superstar taking podcast listeners on a true wellness adventure, picking the brains of some big names and getting used to the sound of his own voice.
Now, from ABC Studios in Times Square, Amy Robach with What You Need to Know.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on this Wednesday for What You Need to Know. We're happy you're here with us. Some of the major developments we are tracking: new government data showing a slight decrease in new cases, deaths, and test positivity rates, with known cases of coronavirus worldwide now well over 20 million, at least 5.1 million of those cases here in the U.S., with more than 63 million Americans tested. With me now, ABC Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. Jen Ashton. Dr. Jen, as you and I know, the CDC definitely taken on some criticism about its handling of the coronavirus pandemic, but they're still keeping track of other possible health risks that are on the horizon while helping at the same time to address COVID-19. Right. This one's interesting. Most recently, their focus has turned to Legionnaire's disease.
Yeah, and we have to remember, Amy, that the CDC really is looking at many things at the same time. It's not all about COVID-19, but this particular news headline has to do with the bacterial pneumonia causing Legionnaire's disease. It is fatal about 10% of the time. It is generally found in stagnant water and air conditioning ducts, and most recently it was detected in some office buildings in Atlanta that the CDC uses and leases, so they had to shut down those office buildings in response, obviously.
Right, and the reason why this is interesting in the time of COVID is that we're seeing buildings now starting to reopen that had been shut down for workers. There could be real risks potentially if you've had a low occupancy period during this time.
Exactly, and we're not only talking about office buildings, but potentially hotels or resorts. So this is really about increasing awareness here, because we know that this bacteria can spread with sinks that are just recently turned on, flushing toilets, and water fountains that haven't been used and then start to see use. There is not yet any official guidance from the CDC on how to prevent this. Usually it's chlorinated water or just using the water system. The good news is it does not spread person to person. And again, symptoms of this bacterial pneumonia: cough, fever, shortness of breath, just like COVID. There are about 10,000 cases of Legionnaire's in the U.S. approximately every year, and awareness is key so that we can help prevent and reduce the incidence.
Thank you for raising all of our awareness. We appreciate it, Dr. Jen. We're going to turn now to ABC's Kira Phillips, who's in Washington with the latest headlines for us. Good afternoon, Kira.
Great to see you, Amy. We begin with Joe Biden's choice of a running mate after months of speculation. Reaction around the country still coming in to the naming of the first woman of color in history on a major political ticket. Vice President Biden and his former rival, California Senator Kamala Harris, delivering remarks together in Wilmington, Delaware today, and we will be there. Our colleagues at 538 launching its 2020 presidential election forecast today. It uses polls and other data to project President Trump's and Joe Biden's chances of winning in November. We edge closer to Election Day. Check it out, 538.com. And it was one of the most closely watched and expensive primaries in the state. After a hard-fought congressional primary contest in Minnesota in the 5th District, Representative Ilhan Omar victorious in that battle. And to the b-ball court for one of the luckiest bounces in the history of basketball. Take a look at this. Damian Lillard of the Portland Trail Blazers first clinking the rim, but then sinking that wild bomb from 33 feet away. He scored an incredible 61 points in that win over the Dallas Mavericks. And Amy, apparently that amazing shot, just one of 8 3-pointers in that game, 16 points in the fourth quarter for him, and a teammate saying after the game, we just weren't meant to lose.
I was going to say, and the crowd went wild, except for maybe they just did virtually, right, Kira?
Exactly, in front of their television sets.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Well, Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden putting the longtime speculation to rest and naming California Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate. Here to weigh in on this historic announcement and where the party's presidential ticket goes from here is Democratic National Committee Chair Tom Perez. Thank you so much for being with us. And I think it's pretty important to note, whether you're into politics or not, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, left or right, the announcement yesterday was historic for all Americans. So I'm curious, as the chair of the DNC, when did you hear about the big news?
Well, I heard yesterday, a couple hours before the announcement, and I was
absolutely, I had goosebumps, quite frankly, Amy. This was a historic day, shattering so many glass ceilings for women, glass ceilings for women of color. And Kamala Harris is ready to govern day one. I've known her for a long time. I know her family. She is a person of character. She's a fighter. She's going to make sure that everybody has a seat at the table. And I'm so proud of Joe Biden. Joe Biden he ran a really inclusive process for the vice presidential determination, and I think he picked the perfect running mate.
We have heard from progressives within your party who have expressed some skepticism, some doubt about Kamala Harris, and they've said that she is too law and order, that she's too cozy with the police, that she's too much of a centrist. What do you say to those critics?
I say, look at the facts. Kamala Harris is a fighter. She took on big banks in California, got a $20 billion settlement for victims of mortgage fraud. She was the first person. She ran the Department of Justice in California. The only Department of Justice bigger than that is the United States Department of Justice. And she undertook major reforms there, including the use of body cameras to make sure that law enforcement was transparent. Her entire life has been fighting for the underdog. And I think as the American people get to know her, they're going to see somebody who has their back on the issues that matter most. And I'm so proud to have her on the ticket. And I think people, the more you learn about Kamala Harris, the more you will love her.
So you're running the show. The convention kicks off on Monday, as you alluded to. What do we have to look forward to? What are we going to see?
I think it's going to be an exciting week. It'll be different than past conventions. There will be less podiums and more conversations around kitchen tables and in union halls across America. You'll see people that you know and love, like Michelle Obama, Barack Obama, and other great leaders of our party, governors and mayors who've led. And you'll also see everyday Americans, ordinary people who've done extraordinary things through this pandemic. Dreamers who are frontline paramedics, people who have been saving lives and putting their own lives at risk. That's the American ethic. And our convention is going to highlight the remarkable work of so many people. It's about bringing America together. We need to unite this country, and we're going to have our unity on full display next week. I'm a big believer that hope triumphs over fear. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are two of the most optimistic people I know, and you're going to see that optimism. We're fighting to make sure that we take back our country. We build back a better America, not an America we saw in 2016, but America we need to have in 2021 and beyond. And I'm really excited. And there'll be a few surprises, too.
All right. We'll look forward to that. Democratic National Committee Chair Tom Perez, thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure to be with you, Amy.
Well, there is much more ahead here on What You Need to Know, the intensifying battle with coronavirus in the Lone Star State. We are on the front line with the mayor of Laredo, Texas, and the bus driver driven to learn his back-to-school U-turn to help shape students' lives in a whole new way.
Most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Your mom said, comb your hair. Your dad told you, smarten up. Your dog is judging you right now. And your best friend just called you crazy. We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. Now, imagine getting your news like that. No bull, no spin, just give it to me straight. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqis, 18,000 tons. Patatas. Ismail? David.
Over ground zero from Hurricane Michael.
You can see just home after home. David, nice to meet you. This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you.
Now, with With so much on the line, ABC News, America's #1 news, is right there for you live on Hulu with stories of strength, stories of hope. Because now, when it matters most,
Hulu has live news.
Hulu has live news.
Hulu has live news, and that news is ABC News.
ABC News Live on Hulu.
ABC News Live on Hulu.
Watch the news you need.
Thanks so much for streaming with us.
Streaming to all Hulu subscribers right now. Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True Crime 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
Well, the pandemic hit South Texas particularly hard this summer, and so far it has shown no signs of slowing down in that region. The border city of Laredo, Texas, has reported nearly 8,500 positive coronavirus cases and 175 deaths. And with those numbers, unfortunately, on the rise, here to discuss the situation in South Texas is Laredo Mayor Pete Saenz. Thank you so much for being with us, Mayor Saenz. And I know last week we heard from officials warning that 2 hospitals there in Laredo were already at capacity. So what are you doing to make sure everyone in your community has access to medical care?
Well, thank you so much for the invitation, and hello and buenos dias from Laredo, Texas. Yes, we have a situation that's critical here in Laredo, Texas. The numbers have been going up, positives. We have 175 people that have passed away. Hospitalizations are up, and yet some of the people are being transferred to other hospitals, particularly in San Antonio. So it's critical here, and that we're doing the best we can to spread the message to the residents here by every means possible, that so they can get the message, wear the masks, don't congregate, and of course that socially distancing is so important. And we're doing the best we can.
Yeah, we heard from the county medical examiner there that between border crossing attempts and COVID-19, Laredo's morgue is now at capacity. How is your city handling that?
Well, they're bringing in more coolers. The responsibility belongs to the county, and of course the city is there to assist. But so far, we've been able to manage and control that by bringing in cooling units to keep the bodies for the time being.
Yeah, no, it's such a difficult thing to try and manage. And I know as well, 2 detention centers there in Laredo have already suffered outbreaks this summer. How are you stopping that from becoming a bigger problem in those facilities?
Well, luckily we have a very experienced medical authority with us. They've been testing and segregating. They segregate the positives and negatives and within the same facility. And then they wait until 14 days have expired with no symptoms before they can actually release that facility from a quarantine aspect.
Mayor, final question. Last week, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol announced a new contract to build 17 miles of border wall there in Laredo. What effect do you think that will have?
Well, the impact is quite quite out there. I would say our people, our policy has been no physical structures, but yet the federal government has pursuing the wall. They've issued that contract, and we'll just wait and see what time brings. I know that we've challenged, and others, private owners have challenged legally that position of the federal government, but only time will tell.
Well, we know you have been incredibly busy protecting and serving your community. Laredo, Texas Mayor Pete Saenz, thank you for all you're doing, and thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you so much. And from the #1 land portal, Laredo, thank you for taking interest in us.
We hope you are well. Just ahead on what you need to know, the man behind the wheel of that school bus, now driven to help students in a whole new way, headed back to school himself. That story when we come back.
In times like these, the news-making events happen here. ABC News.
President Trump meeting face-to-face with one of the world's most brutal dictators, Kim Jong-un.
The president.
You trust him?
I do trust him, yeah. I think he trusts me, and I trust him.
Ivanka Trump.
I have to ask you about your emails. Your father had taken Hillary Clinton to task for this.
There just is no equivalency.
So the idea of lock her up doesn't apply to you?
No.
Comey.
How strange is it for you to sit here and compare the president to a mob boss?
Very strange.
Michelle Obama.
What do you wish you could tell your pre-White House self?
Melania Trump.
Do you think there's still people there that he can't trust?
Yes.
Still working now?
Yes.
Michael Cohen.
So he's still lying.
Yes.
It's a big statement.
And now, in a year with so much on the line, we're right there.
Good evening tonight from Washington, a very busy news night.
America's #1 news source, ABC News. Straightforward. ABC News. America's #1 news source. Straightforward news. Straight to the heart of the story. ABC News. Straightforward. And download the app now and sign up to get important breaking news alerts wherever you are.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Breaking news, live events, streaming nonstop. Original breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, and it's all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you. ABC News Live. It's that easy to go there.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. Start Here, free on Apple Podcasts.
We are back now with the beloved school bus driver, a favorite of his students, and now taking a new road in his own life journey, determined to become an educator himself.
My name is Clayton Ward, and I work as a school bus driver in the city of Framingham. Growing up, my family actually owned school buses in Tennessee, and so I've always kind of been around the business. It's very trying. It's very tough. It does take a special person to really drive a bus. Not only like you have to keep the kids safe. So what makes me happy is just seeing them happy in general. I'm a person that likes seeing other people happy, and especially kids, seeing the joy on their face, their face light up when they step on the bus and they see that it's me driving. Kids that I haven't driven in years see them at school and they brighten up the second they see me. I've always kind of wanted to be a teacher, even out of high school. I was really inspired by my teachers, and driving the school bus, getting to know these kids, getting to know what they're learning and things like that nowadays. Once I got to break through that barrier with the high school students and get to know some of them and really get to know their classes and stuff like that they're talking about, would talk with history with them because that's a passion of mine. I would try to get them to look at maybe a different perspective in life. Look at it through the time that it happened, not so much with our values, but look at it in their time. And a lot of times that, once they realize that and realize what I was talking to them about, they're like, oh, wow, I wish you were like my teacher. So my next step is I'm starting in a few weeks at Framingham State University in Framingham, Mass, working on my bachelor's degree in history with a minor in secondary education. My dream is to teach high school history in the next, 5-6 years. I hope I'm teaching somewhere by then, well established into a school. What I want people to take away from my story is to be inspired, to be, motivated to go out and do those things, to chase after their dreams. There was a point that, over the years, just bus driving, I was kind of stuck in a rut in a sense. If you want to be a teacher, or if you want to be a fireman or a policeman, or you want a lawyer, doctor, whatever it is, just to go and chase it and not to give up, make it work for you.
Thank you for that much-needed inspiration, Clayton. Up next here on What You Need to Know, when we come back, Dr. Jen Ashton with more on the dog reported to have died from COVID and answers to our viewer questions. And some important tips on getting your digital life in shape, especially for students and those just starting out. The author of Wait For It, Don't Let Your Digital Footprint Kick You in the Butt. Joining us next.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
Neighborhoods are underwater.
24/7 streaming news source from ABC News.
Here goes.
Imagine breaking news, live events as they happen, streaming live, non-stop, straight to you. Imagine instant, incredible access to the most compelling live video.
That's a grenade.
Original, on the edge, breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, all the most innovative storytellers, all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want, free. And imagine the most celebrated, epic live events and moments, all playing out right before your eyes.
See those flames behind me?
Go there now.
Put this fire out right now.
With ABC News Live. Think of it as your live streaming adrenaline rush.
Just look at all of the smoke here.
Real, raw,
Welcome
live.
to the Columbus Zoo.
No matter where the next step takes us, we're taking it.
It's frightening.
And go deeper inside the groundbreaking exclusives from the campaign trail only ABC News gets. Behind the scenes, exclusive access.
Take you inside for an extraordinary tour here at ABC News Live. This is it.
It's time to go there, be there, experience it, live on the scene. Maybe that's why, in just 1 year, ABC News Live is already America's #1 live streaming news. And imagine this, it's free. Watch ABC News Live right now and anytime, streaming on Roku, Hulu, Facebook, and abcnews.com.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you.
And welcome back to What You Need to Know. We have Dr. Jen Ashton here, and headline here in these summer months, something we can probably all get a little excited about. The EPA approving a new insect repellent that's non-toxic, and it's not just about not getting those itchy bites, it's also about preventing the spread of disease.
And now they're saying this is, quote, safe enough to eat, not that they're recommending that. It's called newtkatone. It actually comes from an oil found in cedar trees and grapefruit, so it has a nice smell to it.
Smells good.
They've known for a while that it has repellent characteristics, but in higher doses can actually be deadly to these insects. And so it repels and kills ticks and mosquitoes. And as you mentioned, Amy, this isn't just a nuisance, but worldwide and here in the U.S., tick-borne illness, mosquito-borne illness has tripled in the last 15 years, according to the CDC. So we're talking about Lyme disease, Zika, West Nile, anaplasmosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, all of those things.
I got Rocky Mountain spotted fever covering a hurricane 2 years ago in North Carolina.
Not something you want to have.
No, it is not.
Yeah, so this is getting a lot of attention. The head of vector-borne illness from the CDC saying it has, quote, great potential, not yet available. But again, anytime we have something that's natural and non-toxic that can reduce the risk of this, not just here, but around the world, that is a huge victory, not just for lifestyle and convenience, but for public health.
It is, and for somebody who's in the woods a lot, you know, and I think I'm an adventurer, you don't want to be putting DEET on your body.
No, I mean, it's effective,
awful.
but right, it does feel awful. And we should mention just briefly that a lot of the symptoms of tick-borne illness unfortunately overlap with that of COVID. So it's important to have everything on your radar, and this is getting, you know, a lot of good attention.
Hey, we'll take any good news we can get, and hopefully it'll be readily available soon.
I hope so too.
All right, Dr. Jen answering your questions when we come back.
Most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Your mom said, comb your hair. Your dad told you, smarten up. Your dog is judging you right now. And your best friend just called you crazy. We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. Now imagine getting your news like that. No bull, no spin, just give it to me straight. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqis, 18,000 tons. Patatas. Ismail? David.
Over ground zero from Hurricane Michael.
You can see just home after home. David, nice to meet you. This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you very much.
Now, With so much on the line, ABC News, America's #1 news, is right there for you live on Hulu with stories of strength, stories of hope. Because now, when it matters most,
Hulu has live news.
Hulu has live news.
Hulu has live news, and that news is ABC News.
ABC News Live on Hulu.
ABC News Live on Hulu.
Watch the news you need.
Thanks so much for streaming with us.
Streaming to all Hulu subscribers right now. Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
With America reopening, how can you stay safe and thrive? We all have so many questions.
And that's why we're right here for you with what you need to know.
Afternoons on ABC.
Welcome back to What You Need to Know and a sign of the times. The unusual vacation opportunity taking you back to the 90s. The last blockbuster in the country there in Bend, Oregon, offering Airbnb sleepaways for up to 4 guests for those in the mood of a steady stream of VHS tapes and plenty of salty snacks. I think the bedding is even reminiscent of the 90s. I love it. All right. You know, a lot of us like to go back in time, but we're here in 2020, so let's figure out what we're doing about it. Dr. Jen Ashton, some answers to our viewer questions. The first one, is the vaccine still expected to be ready by 2021?
So much attention on that vaccine timeline, Amy. The short answer is yes, there is optimism that it can be ready sometime in 2021, according to Dr. Anthony Fauci, possibly early 2021. But to go back to the timeline here, we remember back in the very beginning, 12 to 18 months is the absolute shortest period of time a vaccine can go from 0 to being able to be administered. The land speed record previously, 4 years. So if we get this vaccine anytime in 2021, that will, of course, break the record. And we have to remember that just because it is FDA approved or authorized for emergency use, how many will be able to get it, how it will be allocated, not just here in the U.S., but worldwide, we have not heard any plans about that. So there is a lot that still needs to be determined, and we cannot cut corners on safety and efficacy. So a lot that we still need to figure out.
Yeah, certainly. Well, this next question addresses a concern from all pet owners, given this headline. What do we know about the dog that's believed to have died from COVID-19?
Well, we're still looking into it. That's the short answer. This dog was in North Carolina. Allegedly, it was an 8-year-old Newfoundland. There was a household contact of COVID-19 in one of the humans in the household. Right now, again, the CDC and state veterinarians are saying the risk to animals is low, and the risk of animals passing it to humans is thought to be low. But we have heard cases of this before. We have to remember that animals, especially dogs, do get other strains of coronavirus, and they have shown that they can be infected with SARS-CoV-2 as well. So we're following it. But again, we don't want to think of our dogs being vulnerable. You have to remember the denominator, how many millions and millions of dogs there are in the U.S., and we're not hearing that many cases, luckily, this far.
All right, next question. Should we expect to see an uptick in COVID-19 cases in the fall and winter as more people spend time indoors?
So that is the major concern right now amongst epidemiologists, infectious disease specialists, and public health officials. Obviously, we've seen massive cases during the summer months when people are outdoors, which is known to be safer in terms of risk of spread and transmission. When people go inside, of course, that is the big concern. Silver lining is we may see less influenza because of all of these social distancing, mask wearing, hand hygiene measures. We don't know yet, but the key, if you are indoors, ventilation, ventilation, ventilation. If possible, keep those windows open as much as you can.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Jen. And you can submit your questions to Dr. Jen on our Instagram at Dr. J. Ashton. Well, the pandemic has changed in all sorts of ways how we are preparing to head back to school, from virtual classes to applying to colleges or jobs for the first time. Our online presence is more important than ever. And even in this era of social distancing, you just don't get that second chance to make a first impression. So here to help us get it right the first time is tech expert and author of Don't Let Your Digital Footprint Kick You in the Butt, Stephanie Humphrey. We love your title there. Always brings a smile to our face. So we're talking about going back to school all this week. How can parents help their kids create a better digital footprint in this new era of online learning?
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm so glad you love the title. And that is where the book comes in, really. It's going to help parents, help their kids understand that that digital footprint exists and how to manage it. It's going to help schools get their students together in terms of cyberbullying and sexting and things like that. And it's also going to help adults understand what it means to have a personal brand and how to maintain that and grow it and develop it as time goes on.
Yeah, that's right. This isn't just a book for kids. So what are some of the key things that we as adults could be monitoring and fixing on our social media right now?
So the first thing is your username. I have seen some really egregious usernames in my travels speaking to students and parents. And so that's your first impression. If the username is something that is offensive or vulgar or anything like that, that's going to give a very negative first impression of who you are and what your personal brand is. So you want to ideally be looking to get your own given name, but I know a lot of people have similar names. Use your middle initial or just use something that speaks to you. I'm Tech Life Steph everywhere around the web, and that's because I show people how technology makes their lives easier. So if you wanted to do something that was going to pull your brand together in one succinct username, that would help as well.
Certainly smart and easy to do. Now, in your book, you also say that your profile picture is just as important as your username. So what do you mean by profile photo in terms of what should we be doing?
It really is your first impression, and they've done study after study that shows that the engagement that you get when you have an actual picture of yourself versus a picture of something else or no picture at all, the engagement goes through the roof. And that's what I think we all ultimately want to do with our social media profiles, is get that engagement. So people want to see your face. They want to do business with people they like. They want to connect with people that actually exist, because when you don't have a profile picture, a lot of times people think that account is fake. We know that, bots are taking over the web and social media. So you want to give people that good first impression of you and what your brand represents.
Yeah, there's an immediate connection when you can see someone's face. I get that. Now, you also talk about how our social media bio is an effective way to promote ourselves, but you don't get a lot of room to write the bio. So how do we make the most out of the lines that we do get?
You don't. You have to be very succinct about what you're telling people about who you are, what you do, and where you do it. So think about it like your elevator pitch. They always say, if you only had 7 floors to be in an elevator with somebody that can make your dreams come true, what would you tell them to convince them in that short amount of time? And that's how you should be thinking about crafting your bio, with all of that pertinent information in a very succinct way. Also, take advantage of hashtags, because that's what makes your information searchable on the platform and on the web.
Yeah, how do you know which hashtags to use? I feel like, my kids are always telling me that, but I'm never sure, which ones work, which ones don't. How do you know?
Well, you can do keyword searches on the web. If you're on Instagram in particular, once you add a hashtag before a word, the most common ones will pop up as suggestions. So you may want to use the ones that are more commonly used, but also use the ones that speak to your personal brand. So if you have a branded hashtag, mine is 60-second tech break, because that's the content that I put out every week. You may want to use that hashtag to brand your own content to make it searchable too.
Makes a lot of sense. A lot of great tips for everyone out there. Stephanie Humphrey, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And Stephanie's book, Don't Let Your Digital Footprint Kick You in the Butt, I just wanted to say that one more time, is now available online. When we come back, the NBA superstar turned podcaster having to get used to the sound of his own voice now. And an angle many of us haven't seen, Latinx essential workers filling the frame of this photographer's special lens. We are back right after this.
In times like these, the news-making events happen here. ABC News.
President Trump meeting face-to-face with one of the world's most brutal dictators, Kim Jong-un.
The president.
Do you trust him?
I do trust him, yeah. I think he trusts me, and I trust him.
Ivanka Trump.
I have to ask you about your emails. Your father had taken Hillary Clinton to task for this.
There just is no equivalency.
So the idea of lock her up doesn't apply to you?
No.
Comey.
How strange is it for you to sit here and compare the president to a mob boss?
Very strange.
Michelle Obama.
What do you wish you could tell your pre-White House self?
Melania Trump.
Do you think there's still people there that he can't trust?
Yes.
Still working now?
Yes.
Michael Cohen.
So he's still lying.
Yes.
It's a big statement.
And now, in a year with so much on the line, we're right there.
Good evening tonight from Washington, a very busy news night.
America's #1 news source, ABC News, straightforward. ABC News, America's #1 news source, straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward. And download the app now and sign up to get important breaking news alerts wherever you are.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Breaking news, live events, streaming nonstop. Original breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, and it's all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you.
ABC News Live. It's that easy to go there.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. Start Here, free on Apple Podcasts.
Keeping our mind and our body healthy is more important now than ever. No one knows that better than our next guest, who has taken his pursuit of wellness, teamed up with star-studded experts, and shared that journey on his new Audible podcast, The Pursuit of Healthiness. Joining us now is NBA superstar Blake Griffin. Blake, thanks for being with us. And I first want to ask you about the NBA. We know you're not currently in that bubble in Orlando because your team, the Detroit Pistons, did not qualify. How do you think that's going to affect you heading into the next NBA season?
It's a good question. I'm not sure. I've enjoyed watching the games in the bubble so far, but obviously as basketball players, our favorite thing to do is play basketball. So not being able to play right now has been a little different. But I've tried to use this time to really have a routine and work out and really be ready for next season. So. We'll see when it comes around. I feel like everything's a little bit up in the air for everyone right now.
No, it certainly is. And those who are playing, they say they're adjusting to those virtual fans. They say there's a playoff-like atmosphere in the bubble. You say you've been watching. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's gotten better every game since day one. I talked to a couple of my friends playing in the games, and they're like, it's still kind of weird. They play the crowd noise, but it's just so hard to replace 20,000 screaming fans, either at you or with you. So I don't know. I'm sure that the intensity will go up when the playoffs start, but for right now, it's still a little weird, I think, for a lot of guys.
Yeah, it's got to be incredibly strange to play in that atmosphere. I know your podcast, as you said, it's been keeping you very busy. It takes listeners into the lives of a lot of celebrities like Michael B. Jordan, who talks about exercise candidly. What have you learned from them about keeping yourself healthy and happy?
I think early on, and especially, during this pandemic, I think early on, it was so weird for all of us, and we were all out of our comfort zone and off our routines that I know the first week for me was a little crazy. I sort of was all over the place, and I realized quickly that I needed to sort of put some rules in place. So some friends and I kind of got together and we made sort of a constitution for how we were going to live during this quarantine. And that structure helped me not only physically get everything in that I needed to, but also mentally, just sort of having that set schedule every day and sort of having something to look forward to. So that definitely helped me. But, in talking with all these people, I think the biggest thing is finding what works for you. Yeah. I think that's so important, especially in this time for everybody when everything's a little bit off.
Yeah, no, that is so important. And I know this is cool. You spoke with Carly Kloss, and she talked about body image. You said you learned something from her that you want to share with your daughter. What was that?
I think the most surprising thing with that conversation with Carly was that, she, as a supermodel, even deals with body image issues. And I think that says a lot. It says, that it's something that everybody struggles with. This is a supermodel who literally gets paid to have the ideal body type or the ideal look. So I think that's one thing, but also I think it says something to the unreal expectations and standards that we put on people, and it's unfair. And I want my daughter to hear that somebody like Carly has been doing this for a long time and is such a consummate professional, even deals with that, because it's not fair to a lot of people, a lot of girls, a lot of little girls around the world. So I think it's very important for young people to hear that.
Yeah, no, and it's such an important message. I love that you're talking about working on yourself, but also at the same time, sometimes maybe just giving ourselves a break and remembering that we aren't perfect, but we can make our lives better. And this is such a wonderful podcast. Blake, thank you so much. I'm going to tell everyone to check out your Audible original podcast, The Pursuit of Healthiness. Blake Griffin, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Up next, when we come back, every picture tells a story. The photographer aiming his lens at Latinx essential workers. Stay with us.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
Neighborhoods are underwater.
24/7 streaming news source from ABC News.
There goes.
Imagine breaking news, live events as they happen, streaming live, non-stop, straight to you. Imagine instant, incredible access to the most compelling live video.
That's a grenade.
Original, on the edge, breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, all the most innovative storytellers, all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want, free. And imagine the most celebrated, epic live events and moments, all playing out right before your eyes.
See those flames behind me?
Go there now.
Put this fire out right
with
now.
ABC News Live. Think of it as your live streaming adrenaline rush.
Just look at all of the smoke here.
Real, raw,
Welcome
live.
to the Columbus Zoo.
No matter where the next step takes us, we're taking it.
It's frightening.
And go deeper inside the groundbreaking exclusives from the campaign trail only ABC News gets. Behind the scenes, exclusive access.
Take you inside for an extraordinary tour here at ABC News Live. This is it.
It's time to go there, be there, experience it, live on the scene. Maybe that's why, in just 1 year, ABC News Live is already America's #1 live streaming news. And imagine this, it's free. Watch ABC News Live right now and anytime, streaming on Roku, Hulu, Facebook, and abcnews.com.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you.
Thank you to the doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals,
and first responders.
Thank you to everyone keeping our supermarkets, pharmacies, gas stations running.
Thank you to all the essential workers for all that you do.
We thank you.
We thank you.
We thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
For all you do.
And with every challenge, question, concern, we'll be here for you every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Because we will
Get through this together.
Welcome back. From the beginning of the coronavirus crisis, the pandemic has taken a devastating toll on Black and Latinx communities, which in many cases are usually ignored. So one photographer decided to use his talent to highlight the untold stories of Latinx essential workers in the heart of Chicago. And he is joining us now from Chicago, Mateo Zapata. Thank you so much for being with us, Mateo. And I know when the pandemic first hit your neighborhood there in Chicago, you had a real concern for your community. Why was that? What was that?
I felt the responsibility to document what was happening in my community because, for the most part, the history of my community has been invisible throughout the discourse of American identity. And when we're at the forefront, we're constantly criminalized. And so it's up to us to change that narrative. So I wanted to capture the leadership, the resilience, the courage of essential workers and the fact that they were serving as an example, as a living example for future generations to emulate, because we can't accept the negative portrayal of our community any longer. And that starts by telling our own stories and changing that narrative.
Yeah, you just gave me chills. That is a beautiful mission indeed. And you're not just taking photos. I know you also produced a bilingual PSA about the spread of COVID-19. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I produced a PSA because I felt there was a lack of awareness and a lack of effort on behalf of just, local city politics to reach out, right, to the Latino community, which, also speaks Spanish as well. So I had to make some sort of a message that spoke to the community because there had to be just an effort to raise awareness on the impacts of COVID-19 in our community.
Now, Mateo, you went out and covered the Black Lives Matter movement. We saw all of those protests. It seemed like things were starting to die down, but of course, in the last few days, we've seen the tension has once again risen in Chicago. What does it feel like in your city right now?
Well, right now, people are trying to tell the world that our neighborhoods are under-resourced. We don't need the feds to come to our neighborhood. We don't need over-policing because that's been happening in our communities for decades. What we need is resources, right? So if our communities have essential workers and you see our work as essential, you need to see our existence as essential too in our communities. So I think that people are just tired, right? This has been an ongoing issue. It's not new, right? This happened and it's been happening in Chicago for decades. So, things need to change one way or another.
And your photos are certainly leading the way, as is your message for everyone. Mateo Zapata, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Turning now to Dr. Jen Ashton for her final thoughts.
So, Amy, today final thoughts are inspired by an article I read in the New York Times, and it's about quarantine envy, which is apparently becoming a real thing. A lot of people have experienced it but may not recognize the terms yet. It's really obviously the definition in psychology and in society is craving something that other people have. So in the setting of the quarantine, what are people craving? If they have a country house, if they have pets, if they don't have pets, if they have kids at home to keep them company, if they don't have kids at home, you name it, it is generating envy. It also talked about the psychology of this phenomenon and how really when our resilience is low, as it is for so many now, it makes us kind of more susceptible to these kind of emotions and to other bad things. So it does offer some tips, which is of course important. One of them, which I thought was, these are obvious, but I think they're really important for us to remind ourselves. Don't compare yourself to others. Don't judge yourself for having these thoughts or feelings.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Oh, I like that.
That is what I tell my children all the time. I have to remind myself.
That is a good one. Using social media, as we talk about so much on this show, to connect with others instead of to judge others. And don't assume because you see something on social media that it equates to happiness, because it oftentimes doesn't.
Very often not documenting the low points.
That's correct.
All right, Dr. Jen, thank you so much. And that is what you need to know for today. I'm Amy Robach in our Times Square studios in New York City. Thank you for joining us. Come on back tomorrow. For Dr. Jen Ashton and all of us here, please stay well, stay safe, and have a wonderful Wednesday.
In times like these, the news-making events happen here. ABC News.
President Trump meeting face-to-face with one of the world's most brutal dictators, Kim Jong-un.
The president.
You trust him?
I do trust him, yeah. I think he trusts me, and I trust him.
Ivanka Trump.
I have to ask you about your emails. Your father had taken Hillary Clinton to task for this.
There just is no equivalency.
So the idea of lock her up doesn't apply to you?
No.
Comey.
How strange is it for you to sit here and compare the president to a mob boss?
Very strange.
Michelle Obama.
What do you wish you could tell your pre-White House self?
Melania Trump.
Do you think there's still people there that he can't trust?
Yes.
Still working out?
Yes.
Michael Cohen.
So he's still lying?
Yes.
It's a big statement.
And now, in a year with so much on the line, we're right there.
Good evening tonight from Washington, a very busy news night.
America's #1 news source, ABC News, straightforward. ABC News, America's #1 news source, straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward. And download the app now and sign up to get important breaking news alerts wherever you are.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Breaking news, live events, streaming nonstop. Original breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, and it's all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you.
ABC News Live. It's that easy to go there.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. Start Here, free on Apple Podcasts.
One of the most significant achievements of the human race was agriculture, the cultivation and production of food. It's what made it possible for humans to progress from nomadic hunter-gatherer tribes and go on to develop settlements, cities, civilization in general, and many of the technological marvels that we enjoy today. Interestingly, though, we're now at a point where we've progressed so far that food production is now being taken over by machines. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but what I do know is that it's happening all around us. Now, more than ever, robots are taking over food. I'm Drew Prindle, and this is Robots Everywhere, a show where we chronicle the slow but steady takeover of our future robot overlords and show you how they're making their way into practically every facet of modern life. So there are three main areas where robots interact with our food. During the farming stage, during the processing stage, and fairly recently they've also started getting involved during the cooking and serving stage. Let's start at the root of that, the farming stage. Without a doubt, the best example of robot farming is John Deere's autonomous tractors. Functionally speaking, these things are pretty much exactly the same as traditional tractors. Depending on what you attach to them, they can be used for planting and fertilizing and harvesting and a bunch more. But there's one key difference. These ones can do all of that without any help from a human. They're equipped with an absolutely dizzying range of environmental sensors and navigation systems and GPS, all of which allows them to drive along and do their thing with minimal human supervision, and sometimes none at all. The idea is that this allows human farmers to get more work done with less manpower. Tractors are just one piece of the pie, though. There are also robots that take care of things like fertilizing and irrigation and even weed removal. Take DJI's Agris drone, for example. This monster octocopter is designed to carry a 16-liter payload of whatever you want, pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, whatever, and autonomously dispense it over your crops. Now, if flying robots aren't your thing, don't worry. There are actually plenty of ground-based crop-tending robots too, like this one from California startup FarmWise. This thing crawls through fields and uses artificial intelligence and a bunch of different sensors to analyze the health.
This is an ABC News special report. Now reporting, George Stephanopoulos.
And good afternoon. We're coming on the air right now because we are about to see the Democratic ticket in this race for the White House for the first time. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, that's the scene in Delaware today. Once rivals, always friends, now running mates in this race for the White House in 2020. The scene there in Delaware will not be the typical announcement for a vice presidential candidate. It came out over social media and email yesterday, a socially distanced event in Delaware today. Joe Biden has spent most of his time during this campaign in and around Delaware, in and around his home because of the coronavirus crisis. I want to go to Mary Bruce, who's on the scene there, and we've got this mix of tradition and something brand new, Mary.
George, this is just a surreal and very bizarre scene. To think that normally they would be unveiling this historic ticket at a massive campaign rally. Instead, in just moments, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will step before the cameras and make history before what is essentially a barely empty high school gym. They will be speaking to just a few dozen reporters, members of the press, and their staff who are sitting in those socially distanced circles. There will be no massive cheering, no big applause. And here outside of the building, we are seeing quite a contrast. Out here, there are about 200 supporters who have been out here for hours, some braving the rain just to get a glimpse of this ticket. Most we've talked to actually really waiting just to get a glimpse of Kamala Harris. It is a remarkable turn of events. It reminds me that it has been nearly 5 months since we've actually seen anything like this, since Joe Biden held his last campaign rally. That was actually an event where he was joined by Kamala Harris. And at that rally, Joe Biden said that he views his role going forward as being a bridge to the next generation of leadership. And what a powerful message he is sending in choosing Kamala Harris to help lead that next generation. A woman that we spoke to here said that it took her breath away when she heard this announcement, saying that it showed that Joe Biden was listening to black women voters like her. She said it showed that in this divisive time that progress was still possible. In a word, she said it means there's hope. George.
And Rachel Scott, but let me go to the scene right now. We see former Vice President Joe Biden, Senator Kamala Harris, both wearing masks. And now we will hear them. Vice President Biden.
Hello, hello. Thanks for being here. I wish we were able to talk to the folks outside, but we're keeping our social distancing and playing by the rules. Good afternoon, everyone. To me and to Kamala, this is an exciting day. It's a great day for our campaign, and it's a great day for America, in my view. Over the past several weeks, I've had the incredible privilege of meeting and spending a good deal of time with a group of talented women leaders, all of whom are qualified to be president. With each one, the more I learned about them, the more I talked to them, the more impressed I was, even though I knew them before. I want to thank each and every one of them for being part of this process. And I look forward to working with them as we rebuild this country to get elected, and once we are elected, God willing. I approach this with a seriousness of purpose and of mind, because this is a serious moment for our nation. We're at one of those inflection points. You've heard me say that before in our history. A life-changing election for this nation. And the choice we make this November is going to decide the future of America for a very, very long time. And I had a great choice, great opportunities. I had a great choice, but I have no doubt that I picked the right person to join me as the next Vice President of the United States of America, and that's Senator Kamala Harris. You know, and it seems Americans all across this nation, at least at the outset here, agree with me. Yesterday, we had our best grassroots fundraising day of the campaign, more than double our previous record. And in doing so, we set a single-day record for online political fundraising. And I think I know why. So I hope that you'll join us as well, those of you who listen today. Go to joebiden.com today. $5, $10, whatever. Kamala, as you all know, is smart, she's tough, she's experienced, she's a proven fighter for the backbone of this country, the middle class, for all those who are struggling to get into the middle class. Kamala knows how to govern. She knows how to make the hard calls. She's ready to do this job on day one. And we're both ready to get to work rebuilding this nation and building it better. As Attorney General of the largest state in the country, Kamala took on the big banks over mortgage fraud and won, took on big oil when it wanted to pollute without consequences. She was a pioneer in marriage equality and tackled the gun lobby. You know, we've all watched her in the United States Senate go toe-to-toe with Trump officials, trying to hide the truth, asking the tough questions needed to be asked, and not stopping until she got an answer. And when none was forthcoming, it was obvious what the answer was. As a member of the Intelligence Committee and the Judiciary Committee, she's been the center in the middle of the most critical national security challenges our country faces. Well aware of all the threats to this nation and ready to respond to them. And as a child of immigrants, she knows personally how immigrant families enrich our country, as well as the challenges of what it means to grow up Black and Indian American in the United States of America. Her story is America's story, different from mine in many particulars, but also not so different in the essentials. She's worked hard. She's never backed down from a challenge. And she has earned each and every of the accolades and achievements that she has gained, many of them often in the face of obstacles that others put in her way, but never quit. And this morning, all across the nation, little girls woke up, especially little black and brown girls, who so often feel overlooked and undervalued in their communities. But today, just maybe, they're seeing themselves for the first time in a new way as the stuff of president and vice presidents. In her campaign in the primary, Kamala often talked about what she referred to as the 3 a.m. agenda, about moms and dads awake late at night in their kitchens, worried, scared, uncertain about how they were going to take care of their families, about how they were going to pay the bills, about how they were going to make it, simply make it. Growing up in Scranton and Claymont, Delaware, I saw that struggle with my family as well. Kamala saw it with hers as well. And millions of Americans are living that struggle as we speak, especially in this moment of crisis, especially with so many jobs lost. Kamala and I both know that all folks are looking for, as my dad would say, is an even shot. Just give me a shot, a fair shot, a shot at making it. And it'll be the work of our administration to make sure they get a fair shot. Working families need someone on their side in this nation because they certainly don't have anyone in the president now on their side. That's going to change in the Biden-Harris administration. It's going to be gratifying to see the strong, enthusiastic reaction to Senator Harris as our next vice president. You know, it comes from people all over the country. It's already occurring all over the country, all ideological views, all backgrounds. Events, of course, we are predictable, some of them. It comes from all over, except, of course, from Donald Trump's White House and his allies. You all knew it was coming. You could have set your watches to it. Donald Trump has already started his attacks, calling Kamala, quote, nasty, whining about how she is, quote, mean to his appointees. It's no surprise, because whining is what Donald Trump does best, better than any president in American history. Is anyone surprised Donald Trump has a problem with a strong woman or strong women across the board? We know that more is to come. So let's be clear. If you're a working person, worried about whether or not you'll have a job to go to, whether or not you'll be able to pay your mortgage, pay your rent, worried about the poison in the air you breathe, the water you drink, worried about your civil rights, even your basic right to dignity, which is under attack with this administration. Kamala Harris has had your back, and now we have to have her back. She's going to stand with me in this campaign, and all of us are going to stand up for her. On January 20th, 2021, we're all going to watch Senator Harris raise her right hand and swear the oath of office as the first woman ever to serve in the second highest office in America, in this land. And then we're going to get to work fixing the mess that President Trump and Vice President Pence have created, both at home and abroad, through 4 years of mismanagement and coddling of terrorists and thugs around the world. Not only will America dig itself out of this hole they put us in, we're going to build back, and we're going to build back better. We have a public health crisis. While he's in court trying to do away with health care, with more than 5 million reported infections, 165,000 people dead and climbing as a consequence of COVID-19. And still, months later, no real leadership or plan from the President of the United States how to get this pandemic under control. No real help for the states and local governments trying to fill the vacuum of leadership from the White House. No real help for children and educators, for small businesses and frontline workers that they're ones holding our country together. Instead, he's issuing executive orders and making promises that in the end will defund the Social Security system while insisting that this virus will disappear. The Joe Biden and Kamala Harris administration will have a comprehensive plan to meet the challenge of COVID-19 and turn the corner on this pandemic. Masking, clear science-based guidance, dramatically scaling up testing, getting states and local governments the resources they need to open the schools and businesses safely. We can do this. We just need a president and a vice president willing to lead and take responsibility. Not as this president says, it's not my fault. The governor should thank me more. As that old saying goes, give me a break. We have an economic crisis with more than 16 million Americans, 16 million still out of work. Donald Trump is on track to break another record, on track to leave office with the worst jobs record of any American president in modern history. But instead of doing the hard work of meeting face-to-face with congressional leaders, Democrats and Republicans in the White House, like every other president has done in a crisis, to get Americans the relief they need and deserve, Donald Trump is on the golf course. If I told you this 3 years ago, you'd look at me like I was being crazy. He hasn't even met with the leadership. He doesn't have time, it appears. We have a climate crisis that Donald Trump refuses to even acknowledge. When he thinks about climate change, all we hear is the word hoax. The Biden-Harris administration is going to meet the climate crisis, protect the health of the American public. And along the way, we're going to deliver one word: jobs, good-paying jobs. We have a racial justice crisis. Donald Trump seeks only to inflame it with his politics of racist rhetoric and appeals to division. You know, today is not only the day I'm proud to introduce Senator Kamala Harris as the vice presidential nominee of the Democratic Party. It's also the 3rd anniversary of that terrible day in Charlottesville. Remember what it felt like to see those neo-Nazis? Close your eyes. And those Klansmen, white supremacists, coming out of fields, carrying lighted torches, faces contorted, bulging veins, pouring into the streets of historic American city, spewing the same anti-Semitic bile we heard in Hitler's Germany in the 30s. Remember how it felt to see a violent clash ensue between those celebrating hate and those standing against it? It was a wake-up call for all of us as a country. For me, it was a call to action. My father used to say, silence is complicity, not original to him, but he believed it. At that moment, I knew I couldn't stand by and let Donald Trump, a man who went on to say, when asked about what he thought, he said there were very fine people on both sides. Quote, very fine people on both sides. No president of the United States of America has ever said anything like that. See him continue to attack everything that makes America America. I knew we were in the battle for the soul of the nation. That's when I decided to run. And I'm proud now to have Senator Harris at my side in that battle because she shares with the same intensity I do. For she's someone who knows what's at stake. The question is, for all Americans to answer, who are we as a nation? What do we stand for? And most importantly, what do we want to be? You know, someone who knows that the future of this country is limited only by the barriers we place on our own imaginations, because there's nothing Americans cannot achieve when we put our minds to it and we do it together. One of the reasons I chose Kamala is because we both believe that we can define America simply in one word: possibilities. Possibilities. Let me say it again. Possibilities. That's America. That's what sets this nation apart, is that everyone, the ability for everyone, and we mean everyone, to go as far and dream as big as hard work and their God-given ability will take them. When I agreed to serve as President Obama's running mate, he asked me a number of questions, as I've asked Kamala. But the most important was, he said to me, he asked me what I wanted, most importantly. I told him I wanted to be the last person in the room before he made the important decisions. That's what I asked Kamala. I asked Kamala to be the last voice in the room, to always tell me the truth, which she will. Challenge my assumptions if she disagrees. Ask the hard questions. Because that's the way we make the best decisions for the American people. I got a chance to spend some time at my home today with Kamala and Doug. And I want to thank them. I thank them publicly for agreeing to join and take this journey with Jill and me. Doug, you're going to have to learn what it means to be a barrier breaker yourself in this job you're about to take on. America's first second gentleman. And although they're not with us here today, I want to thank Ellen Cole as well. I had a chance to speak to Doug's mom and dad and to Ellen Cole. And we're going to get our kids together to let them know what's coming. My grandchildren are about the age of their children. I got to speak to them. My campaign has always been a family affair, every campaign I've run. So I've got some news for you. You're all honorary Bidens. And here's the best part. Kamala, you've been an honorary Biden for quite some time. You know, I came first to know who Kamala was through our son, Beau Biden. They were friends. They served as attorneys general at the same time. They took on the same big fights together. Kamala in California, Beau here in Delaware. Big fights that helped change the entire country. I know how much Beau respected Kamala and her work, and that mattered a lot to me, to be honest with you, as I made this decision. So now we need to get to work, pulling this nation out of these crises we find ourselves in, getting our economy back on track, uniting this nation, and yes, winning the battle for the soul of America. My fellow Americans, now let me introduce to you, for the first time, your next Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. Kamala, the floor is yours.
What do you want? Here you go. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. As I said, Joe, when you called me, I am incredibly honored by this responsibility and I'm ready to get to work. I am ready to get to work. After the most competitive primary in history, the country received a resounding message that Joe was the person to lead us forward. And Joe, I'm so proud to stand with you. And I do so mindful of all the heroic and ambitious women before me, whose sacrifice, determination, and resilience makes my presence here today even possible. This is a moment of real consequence for America. Everything we care about, our economy, our health, our children, the kind of country we live in, it's all on the line. We're reeling from the worst public health crisis in a century. The president's mismanagement of the pandemic has plunged us into the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. And we're experiencing a moral reckoning with racism and systemic injustice that has brought a new coalition of conscience to the streets of our country, demanding change. America is crying out for leadership. Yet we have a president who cares more about himself than the people who elected him. A president who is making every challenge we face even more difficult to solve. But here's the good news. We don't have to accept the failed government of Donald Trump and Mike Pence. In just 83 days, we have a chance to choose a better future for our country. So, Joe, Dr. Biden, thank you for the trust you've placed in me. Jill, I know you will be an incredible First Lady. And my husband, Doug, and I are so grateful to become a part of your extended family. And ever since I received Joe's call, I've been thinking, yes, about the first Biden that I really came to know, and that, of course, is Joe's beloved son, one of his beloved sons, Bo. In the midst of the Great Recession, Bo and I spoke on the phone practically every day, sometimes multiple times a day, working together to win back billions of dollars for homeowners from the big banks of the nation that were foreclosing on people's homes. And let me just tell you about Bo Biden. I learned quickly that Bo was the kind of guy who inspired people to be a better version of themselves. He really was the best of us. And when I would ask him, where'd you get that? Where did this come from? He'd always talk about his dad. And I will tell you, the love that they shared was incredible to watch. It was the most beautiful display of the love between a father and a son. And Bo talked about how Joe would spend 4 hours every day riding the rails back and forth from Wilmington to Washington so he could make breakfast for his kids in the morning and make it home in time to tuck them in bed each night. All of this so 2 little boys who had just lost their mom and their sister in a tragic accident would know that the world was still turning. And that's how I came to know Joe. He's someone whose first response when things get tough is never to think about himself, but to care for everyone else. He's someone who never asks, why is this happening to me? And instead asks, what can I do to make life better for you? His empathy, his compassion, his sense of duty to care for others is why I am so proud to be on this ticket. And Joe and I, yes, we are cut from the same cloth. Family is everything to me, too. And I cannot wait for America to get to know my husband, Doug, and our amazing kids, Cole and Ella. Because whether I'm cheering in the bleachers at a swim meet, or setting up a college room dorm, or helping my goddaughter prepare for her school debate, or building Legos with my godson, or hugging my 2 baby nieces, or cooking dinner, Sunday dinner, my family means everything to me. And I've had a lot of titles over my career, and certainly vice president will be great. But Mamala will always be the one that means the most. And you know, my mother and father, they came from opposite sides of the world to arrive in America. One from India and the other from Jamaica, in search of a world-class education. But what brought them together was the civil rights movement of the 1960s. And that's how they met, as students in the streets of Oakland, marching and shouting for this thing called justice, in a struggle that continues today. And I was part of it. My parents would bring me to protests strapped tightly in my stroller. And my mother, Shamala, raised my sister Maya and me to believe that it was up to us and every generation of Americans to keep on marching. She'd tell us, don't sit around and complain about things, do something. So I did something. I devoted my life to making real the words carved in the United States Supreme Court, equal justice under law. And 30 years ago, I stood before a judge for the first time, breathed deep, and uttered the phrase that would truly guide my career and the rest of my career. Kamala Harris for the people. The people, that's who I represented as district attorney, fighting on behalf of victims who needed help. The people, that's who I fought for as California's Attorney General when I took on transnational criminal organizations who traffic in guns and drugs and human beings. And it's the people who I have fought for as a United States Senator, where I've worked every day to hold Trump officials accountable to the American people. And the people are who Joe and I will fight for every day in the White House. And let me tell you, as somebody who has presented my fair share of arguments in court, the case against Donald Trump and Mike Pence is open and shut. Just look where they've gotten us. More than 16 million out of work. Millions of kids who cannot go back to school. A crisis of poverty, of homelessness, afflicting Black, brown, and indigenous people the most. A crisis of hunger, afflicting 1 in 5 mothers who have children that are hungry. And tragically, more than 165,000 lives that have been cut short. Many with loved ones who never got the chance to say goodbye. It didn't have to be this way. 6 years ago, in fact, we had a different health crisis. It was called Ebola. And we all remember that pandemic. But you know what happened then? Barack Obama and Joe Biden did their job. Only 2 people in the United States died. 2. That is what's called leadership. But compare that to the moment we find ourselves in now. When other countries are following the science, Trump pushed miracle cures he saw on Fox News. While other countries were flattening the curve, he said the virus would just, poof, go away. Quote, like a miracle. So when other countries opened back up for business, what did we do? We had to shut down again. This virus has impacted almost every country. But there's a reason it has hit America worse than any other advanced nation. It's because of Trump's failure to take it seriously from the start. His refusal to get testing up and running. his flip-flopping on social distancing and wearing masks, his delusional belief that he knows better than the experts. All of that is reason, and the reason that an American dies of COVID-19 every 80 seconds. It's why countless businesses have had to shut their doors for good. It's why there is complete chaos over when and how to reopen our schools. Mothers and fathers are confused and uncertain and angry about childcare and the safety of their kids at school, whether they'll be in danger if they go or fall behind if they don't. Trump is also the reason millions of Americans are now unemployed. He inherited the longest economic expansion in history from Barack Obama and Joe Biden. And then, like everything else he inherited, he ran it straight into the ground. Because of Trump's failures of leadership, our economy has taken one of the biggest hits out of all the major industrialized nations, with an unemployment rate that has tripled as of today. This is what happens when we elect a guy who just isn't up for the job. Our country ends up in tatters, and so does our reputation around the world. But let's be clear, this election isn't just about defeating Donald Trump or Mike Pence. It's about building this country back better. And that's exactly what Joe and I will do. We'll create millions of jobs and fight climate change through a clean energy revolution. Bring back critical supply chains so the future is made in America. Build on the Affordable Care Act so everyone has the peace of mind that comes with health insurance. And finally, offer caregivers the dignity, the respect, and the pay they deserve. We'll protect a woman's right to make her own decisions about her own body, root out systemic racism in our justice system, and pass a new Voting Rights Act, a John Lewis Voting Rights Act, that will ensure every voice is heard and every voice is counted. The civil rights struggle is nothing new to Joe. It's why he got into public service. It's why he helped reauthorize the Voting Rights Act and restore unemployment discrimination and employment discrimination laws. And today, he takes his place in the ongoing story of America's march toward equality and justice as the only who has served alongside the first black president and has chosen the first black woman as his running mate. But as Joe always points out, this election is about more than politics. It's about who we are as a country. And I'll admit, over the past 4 years, there have been moments when I have truly worried about our future. But whenever I think that there is a reason for doubt, whenever I've had my own doubts, I think of you, the American people, the doctors and nurses and frontline workers who are risking your lives to save others, the truck drivers and the workers in grocery stores, in factories, in farms, working there, putting your own safety on the line to help us get through this pandemic. The women and students taking to the streets in unprecedented numbers. The dreamers and immigrants who know that families belong together. The LGBTQ Americans who know that love is love. People of every age and color and creed who are finally declaring in one voice that yes, Black Lives Matter. All across this country, a whole new generation of children is growing up hearing the cries for justice and the chants of hope on which I was raised, some strapped into strollers of their own. And trust me, it's a song you'll never forget. So to everyone keeping up the fight, you are doing something You are doing something great. You are the heroes of our time. And you are the reason I know we are going to bring our country closer to realizing its great promise. But to do it, we'll need to work, organize, and vote like never before, because we need more than a victory on November 3rd. We need a mandate that proves that the past few years do not represent who we are or who we aspire to be. Joe likes to say that character is on the ballot, and it's true. When he saw what happened in Charlottesville 3 years ago today, he knew we were in a battle for the soul of our nation. And together with your help, that's a battle we will win. Earlier this year, I said I'd do whatever Joe asked me to do. And so now I'm asking you to do the same. So visit joebiden.com to get involved in this campaign and vote, because electing Joe Biden is just the start of the work ahead of us. And I couldn't be prouder to be by his side, running to represent you, the people. Thank you, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
America gets its first look at the first woman of color on a national ticket, Kamala Harris. The music is like music you normally would play after an announcement like that, but check that out right there. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on separate sides of the stage in this socially distanced world. There were no hugs, there were no handshakes. Here comes the family. Here comes Kamala Harris's husband, Doug. Joe Biden, again, both wearing masks. Just a bit of a handshake right there. And hugs for husbands and wives. Joe Biden said her story is America's story. She cast herself as a child of the civil rights movement. And Deborah Roberts, she passed on the mantle in her speech, urging young girls, young boys all across the country to take up that fight.
She sure did, George. And I tell you, when you look at this picture here, you certainly are aware of the history. Seeing Kamala Harris here, the first black woman on a major ticket like this. You heard Joe Biden say black and brown girls will see themselves differently. There's no question that black and brown women across the country have been giddy with excitement since this announcement came along last night. My phone was blowing up with messages from people who were posting social media pictures and so excited. But I have to say, George, and at the risk of being a wet blanket, the black vote is not monolithic. And there are some in the black community who are a little wary. They may not be dancing on the ceiling just yet because of Kamala Harris's strong record as a tough prosecutor. There are some who credit her with putting black and brown bodies in prison. And that is something that she is going to have to deal with. She's going to have to do a little work, I suspect, even though there are a lot of people who are excited today. But as this thing goes on and the excitement wears off, I think she's going to have to do a little work to convince some within the black community to be as excited about this ticket as others are. But for today, there's no question, just excitement and giddiness from people all over this country.
Let me bring in Yvette Simpson on that point as well. Thank you, Deb, because Kamala Harris comes from the middle-of-the-road moderate wing of the Democratic Party, not the first choice of progressives, but Joe Biden banking that this historic move as the first woman of color on a national ticket will overcome that.
Right, and that's something that we have to celebrate. I mean, one thing that progressives don't get enough credit for is the fact that we fight for equality, we believe in racial justice, and we believe we should have a representative democracy. We had our suspicions that he might not choose a progressive because it would be too difficult for him to rein that in, that he'd be worried about the way Trump would play that in the media, that he would have to fight too hard. One of the things about Kamala Harris, though, is she has worked with the progressive community before. She gave a whole litany of some of the things that she's done before. But I do agree with Deborah. She talked a little bit about policing, which she needed to do. She talked about Black Lives Matter. She's been one of the most outspoken about the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And we expect that she will have to answer those questions, and I think she will. But most importantly today, she made the case against Donald Trump, and that's exactly why I think he put her on the ticket.
She did make the case against Donald Trump, but John Karl, our chief White House correspondent, I was also struck by, in some ways, how the script was flipped today. You saw Joe Biden come out there first. Usually you have the vice presidential candidate as the attack dog, the one defending the person at the top of the ticket. Joe Biden, right at the top of his remarks, did exactly the opposite, defended her, took on Donald Trump head on for his attacks against Kamala Harris.
Yeah, it made it clear that the issue number one for the Biden-Harris campaign, the big promise, the big agenda, the big vision, is undoing the damage that they say has been done to this country by Donald Trump. This was a 1-2 punch. Most of the message from both of them was a message against Donald Trump, and quite a harsh one. You got a taste of the way Harris will bring the attack to Donald Trump. She called him delusional and said that he took the greatest economic expansion in our history that he inherited from Barack Obama and Joe Biden, and like everything else he's inherited, drove it into the ground.
And Terry Moran, clearly they want to make this a referendum on how the president has handled the coronavirus crisis.
And it is the major issue in so many ways, George. And you heard Joe Biden there saying there's been no real leadership, he said, from the president of the United States on how to get this pandemic under control. No real help. And Kamala Harris there, the old prosecutor, prosecuting the case with vigor and intensity against Donald Trump's handling of the pandemic, and in part doing so by comparing how the United States has done against our peers in the world. And that is going to be a hard argument for the Trump-Pence ticket. That said, underneath that, it seems to me there's a moral case that the Biden-Harris ticket is making. Joe Biden raising Charlottesville there, and Kamala Harris also talking about the ideals that the country stands for. Joe Biden saying, who are we as a nation? What do we stand for? Who do we want to be? And I think with President Trump embracing those who fly the Confederate flag, hailing their heroes, those men who fought against the United States on behalf of racist human slavery, and today on Twitter even saying Cory Booker will be running housing and having low-income housing invade the suburbs. It's clear that race is on the ballot, not just in the person of Kamala Harris, but in how the president of the United States wants to run this campaign. We'll learn a lot about the country in November.
We certainly will. And Rachel Scott, let me bring you in on this, but hear Kamala Harris talk about Joe Biden's record on civil rights, the struggle of his life. She said as well, what a change from the first time we saw them on that stage together in the first debate last summer.
It really was, George. You know, Senator Kamala Harris was really his toughest critic on that debate stage, now turned his running mate. And she really took him to task, right, on his comments about working with segregationist senators to oppose busing. And she delivered that line that little girl was me. And she was that little girl that was bused to elementary school in Berkeley, California. She said that her elementary school class was only the second to desegregate there. And we saw a glimpse of Biden's talking points a few weeks ago, and next to her name he wrote, "Do not hold grudges," right? But definitely a different tone today. And Biden was under so much pressure, not only to pick a woman of color, but to pick a black woman. And this was about meeting the moment, meeting the reckoning on race that we are experiencing in this country right now. And he was certainly under a lot of pressure, George, to choose a black woman as his running mate.
Thank you, Rachel. Zareen Shah, you've covered Kamala Harris for an awful long time. We learned a little bit more about her today, her background, her parents, her family. Right now, she represents, in many ways, a real-life modern family.
Yeah, George, she really does. I mean, you could just see it from her events. Right after her Oakland rally, her entire family got on stage. She even calls it like a modern family, like the TV show. But on that stage, it was her husband, who of course has a Jewish background, her family, a range of backgrounds, Black, Southeast Asian, South Asian. She really, there's something for everyone when you see her, and that's why so many people can connect with her. So many young people, so many people of different backgrounds see themselves in her. George?
Okay, thank you very much, Zareen. I want to bring in Matt Dowd as well. You know, Matt Dowd, we're seeing Kamala Harris make history as the first woman of color on a national ticket. Women have been on the ticket as the vice presidential pick twice before, Sarah Palin with John McCain, Geraldine Ferrar with Walter Mondale. In both those cases, they were kind of Hail Mary choices, bold choices trying to shake up the race. This is a little bit different. Even though it's a bold and history-making choice, in some ways it was also one of the safest choices for Joe Biden. That says a lot about where the Democratic Party and the country are today.
Yeah, George, the fascinating thing to me about this, and in so many ways, and especially signifying the division of the country and how divided we are, this was both simultaneously a predictable and safe choice because she's been vetted, she's been on the national stage, and a bold choice because of the historic nature of it. He picked somebody that, one, automatically made the ticket that Joe Biden is leading, one of racial diversity, one of gender diversity, and one of generational diversity. He picked somebody that embodies the two biggest social movements in the last 5 years, which is Black Lives Matter and the Me Too movement. And he picked somebody that both is a tough prosecutor and can prosecute a case against Donald Trump and the administration, but also in many ways exudes this tremendous amount of warmth. So she is a paradox in many ways. She is a predictable, safe choice, but she also really is a bold and historical choice.
And finally, let's end there. Leah Wright-Rigueur, professor of politics at Harvard University. There's going to be many battles in these 83 days ahead. But for today, for this moment, it is another barrier broken in America.
It's historic. We have the first black woman as vice presidential candidate on a national ticket and the first Asian American woman as a vice presidential candidate on a national ticket. And the bigger thing, which I think Biden and Harris managed to do today, was about changing the narrative and setting the stage for these next 83 days. We talked a lot about how there are some fractures within the Democratic Party. There are some issues that Harris in particular has to face with black voters, given her record, and including in the Senate, but also as a prosecutor. But one of the things that they did really well today is they set a narrative that centered around family and around conscience, the conscience of the nation, the conscience of the Democratic Party, and also asking people on the ground who might be critical to hold them accountable and to move forward and to say that the work doesn't end on November 3rd. It begins. It really does begin. And then also making this a referendum about Donald Trump in ways that the Trump campaign simply hasn't been able to adjust to. They don't know how to handle a Biden-Harris campaign. And so that is what we should be looking forward to, how Biden and Harris really begin to sculpt the narrative for the presidential election and campaign moving forward.
That is for the next 83 days. We also saw some nuts and bolts politics from both Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, both making fundraising appeals, telling people to get out there and register and vote. This is all just days ahead of what will certainly be a very different Democratic convention starting in Monday, not in Milwaukee where it was supposed to be, but basically all around the country. We're going to return now to our regular programming. We'll have a full report tonight on World News Tonight with David Muir. Have a good afternoon.
This has been a special report from ABC News.